One of the questions many people ask is, how did I get from making movies to teaching about the medicine wheels? Well, it was an interesting journey. To begin with, I was married when I was making movies, and my husband and I wanted to start our family. But we were having some problems. I kept having miscarriages, and after the third miscarriage, I was very disappointed. My doctors told me that anywhere from 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 5 pregnancies end in miscarriage, that it's very common, and that they really have no idea what's causing this. They did all kinds of tests and ran all kinds of exams and did their little mojo, but they never came up with a real concrete reason why this kept happening. So I was left on my own to grieve and be very upset and frustrated. So I turned to my ancestors. I turned to the traditions of my people. Being part Cherokee, I tried to find a medicine man that would help me by doing a traditional healing. Now, I had known one person who I considered a medicine man years and years ago. When I was in high school, my grandmother and I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana, and there was an organization called the Indian Brotherhood Council that held meetings every weekend. And my grandmother and I would go to these meetings, and there was a very wise elder there named Jim who taught us a few things, just some basics. And I tried to reconnect with him, but I don't know if he moved or what happened, but I could not connect with him. So I was very disappointed. Now, this was way back in the mid-80s rather. So we didn't have the luxury of the internet. It was very difficult to connect with people like that. But I did reach out to several people who had little shops and side hustles where they sold stuff through the mail, like sage and things like that. And I struck gold. It was through her that I was able to connect with the medicine man that taught me the vast majority of the things that I know today. So I reached out to her. She said I can make this connection happen. And of course, I had to travel to where that was. Well, it just so happened it was in Southern California. So that was very conducive to my lifestyle. Going out to California to make movies, I did 2 movies every year, and we did them back to back. So I could stay in Southern California longer, after the movies were done, or come out before we were ready to shoot. And find some time to do this healing. So that's what I did. Now, this healing was amazing. He had, oh my goodness, probably 20-some people there. And these were students of his. They were apprentices. They were apprentices to being medicine men and medicine women. So while we were waiting in the main house, they were out in a garage that had been converted into this teaching area where he taught them several different medicine wheels and how to do healings like the one he was going to do later with me. So by the time they got ready to do this healing, it was close to midnight. We had been waiting several hours. His house was amazing. All kinds of crystals and animal skins and traditional artwork. It was kind of like a museum. So we were, content. We were fascinated just looking at all of these things and imagining what was going to happen and what these people were learning. It was very intriguing. So when we got out there, everybody formed a circle, and I sat in the center. And before this whole thing happened, he had me fill out these papers about my life and any extraordinary experiences, any traumatic experiences, what I learned throughout my life. As I look back on it, knowing what I know now, this was basically a vision quest, or going around the medicine wheel and understanding how different things had influenced me in all different directions. And the decisions that I made based on my life experiences that taught me basically what I believed, my philosophy about life. And of course, some of these were flawed. Some of these were based on false assumptions because I had, like anybody, we've had traumatic experiences and bad experiences in our life. And so we, might pick up the wrong impression here and there. Well, these things have an impact on our body. So not to get into it totally, to spell out exactly what happened, but this was a several-hour healing. And during the course of the healing, many different things happened. But one of the things that made the biggest impression on me was they drew symbols on my body. They painted me in different ways that were to give me power and to help take the trauma out of my body that I had experienced. So when it was all over, one of the things that this medicine man told me to do was to go into the house and take a shower and wash all this paint off. And as I do so, to imagine all the bullshit that I've gone through is being washed off and flowing down the drain. And he said, let the bullshit go, put it in a compost pile so we can turn it into rich, nutrient-rich dirt so we can grow some pretty flowers. That made such an impression of me. I even used it, in a lyric in one of my songs, Angel. So I did that. And what's really amazing to me is that, he also told my husband and I to go home that night and make love. And we were staying in a hotel in Marina del Rey. And I knew right then and there that I had conceived. I knew every single time that I have conceived. I don't know how to explain it. It's just an internal gut instinct. I just knew. It's like, that one took, I just knew. So that night when we had sex, I knew I had conceived. Now, was I going to be able to sustain this pregnancy? That was the question. Because up until then, the problem really wasn't so much as in conceiving as it was carrying the baby. Well, I was blessed. I was lucky. It worked. 9 months later, I had a healthy baby boy. So obviously, I was very impressed. I mean, he could do what a whole team of doctors hadn't been able to do. And I don't know how it happened. Maybe it was just dumb luck. You can assume whatever you want to assume. It doesn't really matter. Bottom line is, I was impressed with this power. And I was intrigued because all of these people that helped me in this healing were apprentices to this medicine man. So they were learning what he knew. And to me, it seemed like what he knew was pretty powerful. And I wanted to know it too. I wanted to learn the ways of my ancestors. I had been, as so many of us are, cut off from the original teachings, traditions, and religion of our ancestors, whether it's through the boarding schools that took our people away, and by the time they released them, if they lived, they couldn't speak the language of their family anymore to be able to have this stuff passed on, or if it was because the United States government made this so illegal, they even shot people and killed people because they wouldn't give up their religion. They shot people doing the ghost dance. They shot people doing the sun dance. So there's a lot of reasons that the religion and the traditions and the teachings of our ancestors were lost along the way. And if this gentleman had some knowledge that was powerful and authentic, by God, I wanted to learn it. Because what he did for me was pretty doggone miraculous in my book. And I was very thankful. So I went back repeatedly to learn from this guy. Now, many people have called him a charlatan. I'm not going to say his name. Some of the things he taught, I know, were not authentic. And he even said, anything I teach you, I want you to put it, in your little magnifying glass. Does this grow corn for you? Does this make sense to you? Does this work for you? Does this make your life better? Does it make sense to you? And if it does, great. Put it in your quiver, use it. If it doesn't, let it go. Throw it by the wayside. Leave it there for somebody else to pick up if they want it, So that's what I did. I mean, he told us some of the things, they might not resonate with you. That's okay. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to embrace them. I'm not asking you to believe everything I say as being absolute fact. So, yeah, there were some things he taught. And I go into those things on my Patreon page. They're rather explicit. And I know that well, at the very least, they're questionable. But they're intriguing, they're interesting, and, for some people, they might actually grow corn, they might hold water, so you might be interested in that, but they're not something that I totally embrace. The things I totally embrace and believe in wholeheartedly, those are the things I share here with you on my YouTube channel. And they're mostly mental health. The medicine wheels, the teaching triangles, all of the things that I've learned, not only from him, but from Dottie, who was on the big island of Hawaii. She was a kahuna. And from Gladys Tantagwidian, whose brother Harold was the last chief of the Mohicans. These were my teachers. And what I learned from them, mostly, is what I'm sharing with you. There's some other things, medicine healings with herbs and stuff that I don't share because I don't want to raise the algorithm's red flag about, trying to share health information. Sometimes if you're not a doctor and you don't have the disclaimer and everything, they'll red flag you. And I don't want to run into that. But the medicine wheel teachings, there's not much out there about that. There's a lot of books on herbal healing, on Native American herbs and plants that can, have medicinal properties and antibiotic properties and such. But there's not much out there on the medicine wheel teachings. And the way I see it, our mental health care system is in dire straits. For goodness sakes, these medicine wheel teachings are tens of thousands of years old, whereas the father of psychoanalysis is Sigmund Freud. His work is less than 200 years old. It's in its infancy. These people don't really know what they're doing. They're trying to help. I give them credit for trying. Many people need pharmaceuticals, but it seems that other than talk therapy and pharmaceuticals, that's the end of it. They don't really have a lot of tools in their arsenal. They don't really have a lot of arrows in their quiver, so to speak. So these medicine wheels, I had a rough life. I mean, nobody gets into that genre of movies because they had a marvelous life and their family loves them and everything is peachy keen. No, they get into that business because they really don't feel like they have a lot of options and they feel like this is their best option. That's where I was at. And to process all of the events of my life, all of the trauma and the drama and the violence and the things that I'd been through, talk therapy and pharmaceuticals weren't cutting it. So when I found out about the medicine wheels and what these apprentices were learning, I said, sign me up. And I became an apprentice, a blanketed apprentice, which means that you give a blanket to your medicine man that is teaching you, and he protects you spiritually. And I learned the ways of pipe carrying, to be a pipe carrier, how to do sweat lodges, all that kind of stuff, as well as the medicine wheel teachings that I share with you here. Now, this didn't happen overnight. Like I said, I kept coming back to see him. And at some point, he moved out of state, and I followed him. I mean, I didn't move with him. I just, when I was in that state, I took time off, and I learned from him there as well. And of course, once the internet became a thing, we could stay in contact that way, too. But I must have studied with him, well over 15 years, I believe it was. As you can tell, if you've been watching this channel or you watch the one I had before it was hacked, you can tell there's a lot of medicine wheels, and I haven't even gotten halfway through. There's a lot more to learn. So it has taken me a lot of time to understand how to teach these to other people. The first people I taught were the people of the Lost River Band of the Cherokees in Mitchell, Indiana. They elected me to their position of Blessed Woman. I was so honored, and I am so grateful for that. It just really meant a lot to me that they would elect me in that position. And I tried to share not only the Cherokee language and how to speak Cherokee, which was very difficult. I'm not a language teacher. But the medicine wheels really seemed to help a lot of people. And when I saw how helpful they were to these other people, I realized it wasn't just me. I wasn't the only person that was seeing the light, so to speak, by learning these wheels, understanding what I could do to make my life better, what situations in my life had done to me, and how I could heal from those situations and turn this around to be a productive life. It was helping these people. And when I realized that, I knew that this information is far too valuable to be kept to just myself or one group of people. That's why I call it native strength, because it's in all of us. It's native to all of us. It's not just for natives. It's our unique internal native strength. We have to know how to tap into it. We just don't know how to do that yet. We haven't been given the tools. And that's what the wheels and these teachings are all about, teaching us how to tap into our own internal strength. So we know how to connect with our inner elders, how to realize when the internal fear feeders are speaking, and how to ignore the fear feeder voices, since they're just feeding our fears and feeding on our fears and making our fears worse. We need to silence those and listen to the internal elders. That's the first step. And then you can unlock all of these teachings on the medicine wheels to understand how to interpret events in your life, how to be more balanced and aware of how your image makers, your teachers, your parents, your family have influenced you in good ways and in bad ways, and how to find who you truly are and your purpose in life. Because each of us, and this is the Native American philosophy, we planned this life before we were born. We chose this path. And I know this is a really hard thing to hear if you've had a rough life. It took me over a decade to wrap my head around that one. It doesn't seem to me like if I chose this life, why? Why would I do such a thing? Because this life offered me the opportunity to learn the things I needed to learn. It doesn't mean everything you do in this life is right and you've made the right choices and that you turned in the right direction each time. It means you had the opportunities. Now, if we all had a cushy, easy life, we wouldn't learn much. But when we're given a difficult life, we have lots of lessons we can learn. It gives us opportunities. So when I could finally wrap my head around that and realize that there was a purpose to all this, and I could use these medicine wheels to understand what that purpose was, it was like a huge spotlight had gone off. Now all of a sudden, the curtain's been drawn back. I understand. I see this. As I was seeing this and starting to write these books and others, I got back in touch with many of these teachers, only to find out that they had passed. What is the purpose of knowledge? The purpose of knowing something isn't so you can keep it to yourself. It's to share it You learn things so that you can share it with the world so that other people can learn these things as well. Well, if the people I learned from have gone, how are people going to learn? And then it dawned on me, that's my responsibility. I've been given a gift. I've been given this knowledge. If my teachers are gone, it's my turn. It's up to me to share it with you, with anyone who wants to learn, with anyone who wants to better their life, with anyone who wants to find happiness. So our world is so chaotic, so messed up. Nobody knows how to be the perfect parent, even if they knew how. We are human. We are far from perfect. None of us had perfect parents. None of us will ever be perfect parents. So how do we process that? How do we come to grips with that? How do we know when our parent was a good parent and when they weren't as good as we would have needed them to be? We don't, if we don't have any examples. And of course we don't. We don't have any examples in life. But the medicine wheel teachings show us. They show us what a good parent would do, how we should be in our life to other people, and most importantly, to ourselves. Because let's face it, in most situations, we're our own worst enemy. Our internal voices say things to us, they put us down and say the most horrible things to us that other people would never say. Even the most cruel bully would 9 times out of 10 never say the things that we say to ourselves. We know our own weak points, and we hone in on them, and we pounce on them, and we beat ourselves up. That's your fear feeder voices. We've got to learn to recognize those and silence them so that we can listen to the voices of our inner elders and get that love and peace and acceptance and perfect guidance that we deserve and have never been exposed to before. Anyway, once I realized that that was the key, that's how I knew this is what my life is about. This is why I walked the path I did. If I had to walk through all of that bullshit to get to where I am today, so that I know these things, so that I can share them with you, so that I can help people, then that makes it worthwhile, you know? Anyway, that's how I got from movies to medicine wheels. Thank you very much for watching.